Welcome to the coding video of this month's strategy. I mentioned in the previous video that I'm going to be showing how to code strategies for data gathering and experimentation, whereas previously what I've done is just show you how to code the final iteration of the strategy shown in the overview video. But really, the mindset of a scientist and data gathering requires that you try different ideas. And so I'm going to show you how I actually code and test for different ideas and do sort of analysis based on different entry and exit conditions. There is one caveat I will also want to address here, and that is that the rules that you see here are going to be a little bit different than what I showed in the overview video, and that's just because I'm having to work backward. So the strategy that I showed you in the overview video was created about a year ago, and I'm having to go back in time and piece together how how those iterations were created. And sometimes I make mistakes, and that's just because whenever you're developing a strategy and you're trying different ideas, sometimes you might update the rules for an indicator calculation or an entry condition calculation, but then you forget to update the name of that entry condition or that indicator calculation. And so whenever I'm going and making these videos and I'm trying to piece together what exactly I did a year ago, sometimes I make mistakes and some discrepancies. But what I will say is that the backtests that you saw in that overview video do line up with what we're going to show today. And so even though some of the rules that I mentioned in those overview videos may not match, and this all makes sense as we're actually coding this out, uh, the end result, the backtest result that you see is going to line up. The other thing that I'm going to show you today is how to combine multiple entry and exit conditions into a single toggle, as well as this sort of weird if statement shorthand uh, syntax that is going to be really helpful for how to do that moving forward. And so it'll make a little bit more sense once we get around to that section. But for now, what I have is the strategy template along with a basic structure. And so first, we're going to have our user inputs for entry conditions and exit conditions. Then we have some indicator calculations with a context requirement of today has to close below the 200 SMA. Then we have different calculations for the different entry conditions. And then I'm going to show you how to create a combined Boolean check for those entry conditions. And then we have the exit condition calculations. Then the strategy is actually going to take trades. And then lastly, we probably want to see the 200 SMA on the chart. And since one of the exit conditions is the 5 EMA, we probably want to see that on the chart as well. So let's go ahead and dive into the entry conditions. And this is where some of the discrepancies are going to appear that I mentioned earlier. So in the overview video, I talked about how one of the entry conditions I tested for was 2 bullish closes. That was technically true, I think, whenever I first was experimenting with this strategy. But somewhere in that experimentation, what I ended up doing was I had a variable called 2 bullish closes. But then whenever I looked at the actual code for this, so let's go ahead and add a Boolean set to true. I'll explain this in a little bit once I finish typing this out. So in the actual code for this, I didn't have 2 bullish closes. Somewhere down the line, I decided to test 2 higher closes, and that turned out to be really effective. So the difference between 2 bullish closes and 2 higher closes is simply you could have a gap up, and that creates a higher close, whereas if you gap up and still close a bear bar, that still has a close higher than the day before, that's technically a higher close, even though it's not a bullish close. And so somewhere along the line, this is what I end up doing. And so whenever I was piecing together that overview video that you saw, where I talked about 2 bull closes in a row, I ended up getting confused because that's not actually what my strategy was checking for. And again, this is just because I coded this like a year ago, and I'm having to piece together the exact way that I came up with this strategy in order to create these videos. So now that I know that the logic is a little bit different, let's go ahead and change it. So at some point, I decided that 2 higher closes was a better entry condition than 2 bullish closes. And so let's go ahead and change it to 2 higher closes as the entry condition. And then the other entry condition is that the RSI has to be above 90. So let's go ahead and add an input for that one, and we can go ahead and set that to false because we only need to set the first one to true. That way something appears whenever you first add a strategy to a chart. And then go ahead and create a title for this. This entry is just going to be RSI2, has to be greater than 90. And then the third entry condition, and this is also another area of discrepancy. I mentioned in the overview video that the percent change, I was looking for increasing percent change where today's percent change was greater than yesterday's percent change and yesterday's percent change was greater than the day before. But again, this is a case of where I was experimenting with different ideas and then ultimately found something I liked but didn't update the variable name. And so what I actually coded in the strategy and in order to get the results that you saw was something like this. I'll put it in the title here. So entry, instead of today's percent change being higher than yesterday's and then yesterday's being higher than the day before, really what I end up liking was just checking that today's percent change, so today's percent change was greater than yesterday's and today's percent change was greater than day before yesterday's. So it's a little bit different. Rather than 3 consecutively increasing percent changes, I'm really just checking that today's percent change was greater than yesterday and then greater than the day before yesterday, rather than checking whether yesterday was greater than the day before. And then we have our 2 exit conditions. So I'm just going to call this exit close below prior low. And that's just going to be, we're going to go ahead and set that to true just so that we have something that appears on the chart once we add it. And then I'm just going to call this exit close below low 1. And then have an exit close below EMA, the 5 EMA. So we're just going to set this to input.bool false, title it as exit close below EMA 5 EMA, but not the 5 EMA including today, so the 5 EMA as of yesterday. So that's what that looks like. And then for a context requirement, we have to ensure that today closed below the 200 SMA. So the first thing we need to do is get the 200 SMA value, and that's built into the technical analysis library here. Most trading packages have some sort of technical analysis library that already includes things like the SMA and the RSI. So the typical source for a moving average is the closing price, and our length is 200. And then just to check that today closed below the 200 SMA, we can just put close below 200 SMA, SMA, and that's just going to be did today close below. If I can type SMA 200. And then we have 3 entry condition calculations. So the first one is going to be that we had 2 higher closes. So let's just call this 2 higher closes is equal to close being greater than the close of yesterday and close of yesterday being greater than the close of the day before. So that's 2 higher closes. For the RSI being above 90, we need to do 2 things. First is get the RSI value. And again, this is going to be taken from the technical analysis library that's built in. Most RSIs are calculated based on the close, and then we're using a length of 2 here. And then just to check that our RSI value is above 90. So RSI above 90, and we'll just call this, or we'll just make sure the RSI value is greater than 90. And in case you're confused, this is going to be a Boolean that resolves the true or false. If this is above 90, it'll resolve the true, and if it's not above 90, then it resolves the false. And if you want to be a little bit more explicit about it, you can just do that. But I like to let PineScript tell me whether it's evaluating properly. In this case, you can see it's going to evaluate to a Boolean, which is a true or false. Then for triple percent change, we need to gather the percent change of today, yesterday, and the day before. So I'm going to create 3 different variables for that. So percent change today, percent change yesterday, and then percent change day before yesterday. So the percent change is just going to be close minus the close of yesterday divided by the close of yesterday. And the percent change of yesterday is going to be the exact same thing, just shifted back 1 day. And then same thing over here. We're just shifting everything back by 1 day. And then for the actual checking of the entry condition, we can just call it triple percent change. And then that's going to be percent change today is greater than percent change yesterday, and percent change today is greater than percent change day before yesterday. And then now I want to talk a little bit about how to combine these entry conditions. So we have two challenges here. First is that if only one entry condition and only one exit condition is checked, then we need to allow the strategy to evaluate those. On the other hand, if more than one entry condition is checked and more than one exit condition is checked, then we need to evaluate all of them. So the best way to do that is to create two different variables. So we're going to call this one single entry condition. And this is just going to check to see if any one of those are true. The entry conditions up here are true. So it's just this or the other entry condition or entry triple percent change. And then for the combined version, this one's going to take a little bit of explaining. And so there's a shorthand syntax. So you've seen for if statements, there's a shorthand syntax. So you've seen me code if statements like if condition, then do something, and then if that's not true, meaning it's false, then do something else. And there's another way that you can encode this, and that is to use condition and then question mark, do something, and then if that's not true, then you do something else. And this might seem a little bit confusing at first, so I'll walk you through it. But basically, we need to create a combined entry condition that basically pieces these together. So if entry two higher closes is checked, then we need to evaluate, do we have two higher closes? So basically, if this is true, meaning the Boolean, the user has toggled it on, then we need to check if two higher closes is true. Otherwise, we just return true. And that might seem a little confusing at first, but the point is that so basically this is also a Boolean that's going to return true or false. So if this user input condition is checked, so if it's checked, then we need to check for it. And so if it is checked, then we need to check this condition. And then this is going to return either true or false, whether this condition is true or false. Otherwise, we just simply return true as a sort of proxy for saying yes. Let's skip it. And then what we need to do, I'm going to go ahead and type the word and. And then here we need to check to see if the entry condition for RSI above 90 is checked. So this is just saying if entry RSI above 90, which is going to be true or false depending on whether the user toggled it on or off. And if that's true, then we need to evaluate this RSI condition, whether the RSI value is above 90 or not. And so if the user input is toggled on, meaning this would be true, then do this evaluation, which will return either true or false. But if it's not toggled on, meaning it's false, then we're just going to return true as a way to say just skip it. So I know this is probably a little bit confusing, especially if you're not a programmer, but hopefully over time it'll make sense, or at least if you just follow this format and then think about it. I think some programming concepts take some thinking. You may have to draw it out if it doesn't fully make sense, or you can ask me in the Discord. But this is a sort of programming structure for combining conditions. And then our last condition here is a triple percent change. And specifically, this is not triple percent change. This is did the user toggle on the condition for triple percent change? So if they did, then we need to evaluate the triple percent change. And then if they did not, then we just say skip it, or just return true. So this is going to be a Boolean, which is going to evaluate all of our entry conditions. And what it's basically saying is if the user toggled on an entry condition, then check whether that condition's been met. Otherwise, just say true, or rather just return true for this section of the evaluation. And so then it'll check the RSI above 90 condition. And if the user toggled that on, then it's also going to check the actual condition and return true or false based on the actual condition. Otherwise, it just returns true, which is a form of saying just skip it, just say it's true, in order to return an overall Boolean saying did all of our entry conditions get met or not. So then the entry condition, this is going to be a little bit confusing, I guess, but it'll hopefully make sense. The first one is we have a context filter. So the first requirement is that we close below the 200 SMA. And then we have to consider whether we have even a single entry condition or not. So if none of the entry conditions are checked, then ultimately there's no entry condition. And then if we have multiple entry conditions checked, we need to check those. So this is, I know I'm probably losing some people here. You might have to draw it out, or maybe over time as you use this format in your own coding of algo strategies that you're experimenting and gathering data on, this will kind of grow on you and it'll make sense. Another way to do this, if you just want to look at it in a little bit more of a easier format, is just to do this. Maybe I'm forgetting something here. Maybe I gotta yeah. So I think as long as you break it up a little bit, then you can split them on separate lines, and then hopefully that will allow you to. Let me see if I can line them up actually. Yeah, that way. Yeah, there we go. But yeah, you can put all the combined entry conditions you want to check, kind of like this, and hopefully this is a structure that you can work with whenever you're trying to create your own entry and exit conditions that you want to play around with. So for the exit conditions, we're going to have to do something similar. So we first have the exit condition of close below yesterday's low, and that's just going to be exit close below low. I guess yeah, because that's where here we go. Let's just call it like this, and then that's just going to be close less than low 1. Our second exit condition is close below 5 EMA. So to do that, we're going to have to get the actual EMA value. So EMA 5 is going to be, and this is built into the technical analysis library. Moving averages are typically calculated based on the close, and then our length here is 5. And then the actual exit condition is going to be close below EMA, just call it that. And then we're just checking, did today close below the EMA 5? But I mentioned that I don't want to be checking the 5 EMA including today, but rather the EMA of yesterday, or where the 5 EMA was yesterday. So we can just do, you can put it there. You could also technically do this if you wanted to, but I'm just going to put it there. And then similar to what we did with the entry conditions, we're going to have to combine them in case the user wants to check both exit conditions. So combine exit conditions. And then that's just going to be the same, pretty much the same thing. Although we can write it a little bit differently, but let's just do it like this: exit condition, or rather single exit condition. Let's just do it like that. And that's just going to be either one of these, really. Oh, okay. Actually, no, that's not going to work. Because we actually want to check the ones that are toggled. So I think we're just going to have to do this exit condition. We're just going to have to do the combined directly. So combined exit condition, and that's just going to be um, uh, it. So if the user chose close below prior low, um, uh, then we have to actually evaluate this, or we just say it's true, and then user chose exit close below the EMA, then we have to evaluate, did it actually close below the EMA? Otherwise, we just return true. Let me think about this. Actually, this is slightly wrong here, I think. Need an or here. Yeah. Because technically, so the user can say, can toggle on either one of these to be true. So if the user toggles on one of these, then it'll evaluate this one and then just return true for the other one. If the user toggles on this one, it'll evaluate this one while just returning true for this one. And if the user toggles on both of these, then it's either exit condition. Trying to think if there's a way to do. Yeah, I guess you could do something similar to what I had up here, but I think usually when it comes to an exit condition, you don't generally want both of them to be true. You're looking for if either exit condition is true, if that makes sense. So typically in a strategy, you'll have an exit condition, like a main exit condition, and then you might have some other exit conditions to bail out, depending on whether it's some sort of risk control or depending on what's going on in the market. But you don't generally need all of them to be true at once, and that's why it's written like this. So hopefully that's not too confusing. But basically, when you do exit conditions, you're not trying to. So entry conditions, you might say I need all these entry conditions to be true to take the trade. But for exit conditions, you typically aren't saying I need all of them to be true to exit, if that makes sense. And for the actual strategy logic, this one's pretty straightforward. If entry condition, then we just do strategy dot entry. We're going to take a short position, and we can just call it short. And then the direction is going to be strategy dot short. And then if our exit condition's been met, then we simply exit. So exit, I think it's combined exit condition is what I called it. Then strategy dot close. We close a short position. And then last thing we want to do is actually plot. So we're going to type plot. We want to plot the 200 SMA. We can plot it as any color we want. Let's just make the 200 SMA blue. So that's going to be color.blue. And we're going to title it 200 SMA. And then to plot the 5 EMA, that's just going to be EMA 5. We can make this, let's just make it green for good measure. And then the title is just going to be 5 EMA. So let's go ahead and save this. And then what you'll see here is, let's go ahead, let me just do it like this. So here we have our strategy tester, and then we open the settings. And so here the settings were simply 2 higher closes, and then we exit if we close below the low of the prior bar. And then let's say we also require not only 2 higher closes, but the RSI2 to be above 90. Then you end up with something like this, basically. And then if you decide that the you want to close below the 5 EMA, then you have something like this. And so you can kind of toggle on and off different entry and exit conditions. I might have made a mistake here because I noticed that if I have no exit conditions toggled, it's still, actually just double check here what I did with the exit condition. Oh, I see. Yeah, this logic isn't going to work because it's going to force an exit. I see. So we actually have to write it like this: exit close below prior low. Rather, it's going to be, we have to grab the actual. Okay, so this is how we have to do it then. Rather than doing a resolve to true, this is how we have to write it. Sorry about that. Now if we go to strategy tester, and you'll notice that, so this is now correct. So if we don't have any exit conditions checked, it just never exits, and so we just lose money on our short position. So now here, if we have 2 higher closes, and then we're just looking to close below the low, prior day's low, that's what it looks like. And then if we decide to just try the RSI version, this is what it looks like. So these should be lining up with the video I showed yesterday. Here we've got percent change as well. And if we decide to do 2 higher closes, and then the percent change conditions, so these are the entry conditions, then you end up with something like this, which is the almost viable strategy I talked about in the prior video. And then here, you were to, so let's actually look at this. So I talked about this in that video where if we went and looked at the trades that were taken, I mentioned this, when you have an almost viable equity curve, you want to look at the trades and then determine, okay, well, how can I actually improve this? And one thing that you'll notice is that sometimes it's getting out a little bit too early. And so it makes more sense to get out, or rather, when the trend resumes, I should say, it makes more sense to get out after a dump of the trend resumption rather than simply getting out based on close below the prior low. So let's go ahead and go back here, check the settings. And if we now get out when it closes below the EMA, the 5 EMA, you get just much better exits. And so rather than, like, for example, if you shorted there, the original exit condition would have gotten you out like here for a loss. But then if you believe the bear trend is resuming, you actually want to get out basically on a resumption of the bear trend, which is more in line with what you see here. So if you shorted this, like here, if you shorted this rather than just getting out here, you would wait for a close below the 5 EMA. So this is just an example of how going and looking at the actual trades taken, and then saying, okay, well, how can we improve the strategy just so that it's not just getting out based on like a basic sort of exit rule, but rather getting out after an attempt at trend resumption. And so you'll see here that the 5 EMA does a little bit of a better job, but the little bit of a better job, at least whenever you apply it across all the trades that are taken, does result in a significantly better equity curve compared to some of the exits that would have been taken otherwise. For example, if you shorted there, the normal exit condition would have gotten you out here rather than down here, or if you shorted there, again, normal exit condition would have gotten you out up here rather than over here, which is actually when the bear trend resumed. And so you would end up in these situations where you're shorting in effectively a bear market, but you're getting out and then seeing, oh man, I should have just held longer. And so that's something that I was noticing whenever I was analyzing the strategy, and that's something you'll notice in a decent number of your strategies as well. And so that's when you've got to decide, okay, well, the exit condition needs to be changed, and I need to come up with something that um, allows it to hold just a little bit longer, because that's going to be just a common thing that you run into, is where you develop some sort of strategy and the exit condition just seems to get out a little bit too early. So you need to find some way to just delay that a little bit. And I find that something like a short-term moving average often is a good way to do that. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, if you have any questions, you can ask me in the Discord. The link to join Discord is in the Patreon link below. Um, but yeah, this is how you would code a strategy with multiple entry and exit conditions for you to play around with, toggle on and off, and sort of gather different data as you try to experiment and see what works, what doesn't work. And so you'll notice that, like I said, the RSI, eventually you start getting these like insane profit factor numbers, but when the total trades is not high enough to be what I consider statistically relevant, I'm not willing to trade it. Depending on your risk tolerance, you may be willing to trade something like this. But yeah, hopefully all of this made sense. And again, please consider joining the community if you haven't. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in next month's video.